Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are on part 2 of a 3-part series that I'm doing on what builds and what creates your presence, the building blocks of presence. Last week's video I went over how you act, and today I'm going to go over how you speak. Communication is more than just speaking and writing. It's also our body language is a part of that as well. And with that, it determines how people perceive us, how we speak, how people see us, how much they are going to take in from us, if they're going to approach us, how long a conversation may or may not be with us. So we want to always remember that communication is a part of our total presence as a whole. Now, I'm not saying that you have to sound saying things. No, you want to speak in a clear manner that everyone can understand you. You want to make sure that when you're using words, you understand the context of them, and you're able to have, when you walk into a room, that you don't look as like you don't want to necessarily be bothered, but you're warm and you're inviting. And no matter the present, no matter what form of how we are, no matter our position, that's what I'm trying to say. No matter our position, we are always presenting. We are always on, especially if you are a business owner. People take every little thing that you say and that you do into consideration if they want to work with you, as they get to know you. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to do that, because I fumble over my words all of the time. It is me. That is who I am. I get nervous even though I'm talking into a camera, to make sure that I do a good job. And it's natural and it's also authentic. But it's the little things of the bigger things of, say, grammar, or how maybe I may sit while I'm sitting, while I'm sitting here on camera. Am I paying attention to what's going on over here? And not paying attention to you directly, and not talking to you directly, making eye contact to you and being engaged into conversation. So it's a lot of those things, because it perceives how people see us at the end of the day, and it's part of our total package ultimately. It's what wins over our colleagues, our clients, our friends, and we all know great orators. So one of the best ones that I can think of off the top of my head is President Obama. How he speaks so eloquently, how he prepares his speeches, how even though he prepares for them, you don't see him looking down at them. When he speaks to everyone and not just one person. And when you hear him speak, it's like yes, which is how, he got his slogan for Yes, I Can. That is what someone that has the speaking down, he has the swagger that he has, how he walks into a room, and then how he speaks. He is someone that you can definitely say that has this total package of presence just by him, as I like to sometimes say, like how he glides across the stage, right? But even though when he does, when he gets behind a podium, he is going to have something to say that is going to touch all of us, and it's going to sound like he's talking to just you or just me. That is what your speaking does. So, what are a few things regarding your speaking? So, number one are your speaking skills. This is your grammar. This is using words that you understand the meaning of and the context of, and how to use the word correctly in a sentence. This is not using filler words like like, you know what I mean. I am very good for that, and I'm trying to work on that. And that's the thing, you have to be able to hear yourself. When you hear yourself speak and talk, you'll be able to catch on to it. Because if you make a mistake, or if you use, say, a word in not the right context, or if you pronounce a word wrong all of the time, then people are going to take notice, and not a lot of people are going to correct you on it. So you have to be sure that you're using it correctly. So that means proofreading before you write, before you send off a letter or an email. That is maybe going over and proofreading your speech or your notes before you give a presentation, just to briefly go over them. If you're not good at that, like I am, especially with spelling, you may, even though we have spell check, you may have someone that you know that is good at spelling that may be able to go over to make sure that there aren't any errors. Plus, our favorite friend Google, you can pretty much find any word to spell that you need spelling, even with dictionaries. I think one of the things with our speaking skills in today's world of texting and instant messaging, we've gotten away from the communication skills. You know, we're now paraphrasing words to, like, LOL is like laugh out loud, or I think it's IY, what is it? If you know, you know. I think that's what it is. People are using shorter phrases. If you find out that a lot of people, especially some younger people, but us included at times, we have become lax in our speaking skills and communication skills on a whole, that we no longer how to do simple things as far as picking up the phone and saying hello, or having a conversation face to face with people, especially at a time where we didn't have that type of communication for almost a year, and now we're getting it back. So being able to have the communication that we need to just have a regular conversation. And to me, that is where the magic happens, whether it's in a personal relationship or a business relationship. You're able to understand each other, because sometimes things get lost in the sauce when we're communicating over IMs and text messaging. It just you say something, but the context is mistaken. So we have to learn to just get back to just communication of talking to one another. Number 2 is commanding a room. And this I can go back to President Obama. It's simply building a connection. And when you hear him speak, he automatically builds a connection, especially if you go back to when he was campaigning for his first term as president. His speeches were empowering, uplifting, and they made you feel that you could do anything that you wanted to do. And plus the fact he was doing something that he wanted to do, and we were able to get behind him, and we were able to get behind his message. But it was also more than his message. When he walks across the stage and he stands behind the podium, he has this aura, he has this presence about him that makes you want to listen to him, to see what he has to say. And that's all the time. Even if he's on TV, I want to hear, what does he have to say? Like, what is he going to say this go round? Just because of that. And you can tell that with his speeches, he prepares them in a way that they're heartfelt, they get your attention, they're thought-provoking, and you can tell the passion that he has behind them when he gives his speeches. There are people looking for us and looking for what we all have to offer. And in this world of pretty pictures on Instagram and TikToks and Reels, the one thing that they want, the one true thing that I believe as far as commanding someone's attention, is by what you have to say. Not a picture, because a picture can be manipulated. It doesn't necessarily have to be the truth. It could be a small snapshot of someone's bigger picture or bigger life. But having a communication and being able to command a room with how you speak, that is powerful, because you have their attention and they're waiting to hear what you have to say. And it might be that you're speaking to someone that needed to hear what you have to say, needs the service that you or I provide. They may be looking for you to come in and be that director of their program, or the director of, say, HR or something, because you have something that no one else has. That's where commanding the room with how we speak can help us and affect us, in not just us, but our audience, in ways that we could never imagine or think of. And it ultimately is what attracts them to us. So being able to command their attention. This includes, with commanding the room, sharing our stories. Now, that's a work in progress for me as far as sharing my stories. But that also is something that people are able to identify, and they're able to connect with you on a little more personal level that gets a little bit underneath the skin, a little bit more, to go a little bit deeper. And being able to say, you know what, I went through that same situation, or you know what, I've had that idea too, or I've had trouble with doing that as well, handling my finances, or time management, or how do I put an outfit together. All of that, with telling your story, can help you command a room just through your communication. And my last one, of course, was actually using stories, as I touched base on that. And to go further, it's using less data and heavy fact-based presentations. People are tired of hearing about data, however you want to call it, and the facts. But how does that pertain to me? I could come on here and say, 25% of entrepreneurs aren't where they are today because they don't dress like they should dress. But what am I using as far as my personal story to back that up? It could be something as simple as, for me, it took me 1.5 years to get on video, because I felt I didn't have the clothes to wear to show up on camera. I always thought that I had to be dressed, I had to have the best makeup, my hair had to be done. But in essence, at the end of the day, that's not what it's all about. Now, will that eventually come? Yes. But I have to first be comfortable enough to just sit here as who I am right now, in just a little bit of makeup, and have a conversation with you, and to show up, and to go through and begin to tell you my story in a way that I feel comfortable with, and that in hopes of it helping you, as I know that it can. When you think about this, you want to think of TED Talks. And I've been watching a few TED Talks here and there, and they're never based on data. There is some, but a lot of it is more about storytelling and situations in which they're able to explain something a little bit better, because you can relate to it. And stories help make us all relatable, because we all have stories to tell. And people are out there waiting to hear how our stories and how it relates to them, which will also help us be able to help and serve others. So using in our stories to help with that as well. And I did have one more. We have to get rid of props. And what I mean by props are, if you're, say, in front of a presentation and you have a PowerPoint, they're fine. But you don't want your entire presentation in a PowerPoint, or you don't want your entire presentation in notes written out to where you're sitting or standing reading word for word. I'm not talking about notes. Notes are good, and I'm talking about the never-ending list or PowerPoint presentations. That's reading. I have that in my notes, but once I get what I need from my outline, I'm able to come and just have a conversation. So I'm not looking down at my notes or points as often, because that way you're not grabbing their attention at all. They become bored, and what happens when we become bored? We tune out and we start flipping on our phones, and we start maybe doodling, or we start thinking of other things that we have to do, or thinking of somewhere else where I could be right now, other than listening to this boring presentation. So always make sure that you begin to become comfortable, and this comes over time, but you want to become comfortable with just being there. Maybe having someone go over it with you, and using this up here. If you have a presentation, even if it's on a computer, that's just for your visual, and you're only going to also give them bullet points of the topics that you're going to cover, and maybe 3 or 4 points that you're trying to make, and how to do that. So you don't want it to be just a whole PowerPoint or a whole presentation that just has your whole thing, because people aren't going to listen. And as you know, if someone can figure out and determine who I am in 7 seconds or less, we can tune people out a lot faster. So you always just want to kind of know your material a little bit before you begin to go on and have a presentation. But always remember, notes are your friend. So what are a few ways that we can work on your communication, or we can work on communication in general? You want to stop using verbal fillers like, like, you know what I mean? Or does that make sense? Because I think that's a new one for me, is does that make sense? So you want to try to stop using them, and just, instead of saying it, just allow the person to respond, and just take a deep breath and be like, and then collect your thoughts. Because sometimes I think filler words are used when our thoughts are sometimes going faster than what we're speaking, and what we're speaking as we're trying to catch up to what we're thinking sometimes. We want to broaden our small talk. Now, this was a new one for me, but it actually makes sense. Small talk, of course, is your casual conversation, and it can help with you with joining a conversation, and it can open doors. So for example, if you're at a networking event and you don't know where or how to join a conversation, because you might be an introvert, and sometimes I have an issue with this. I have an issue with joining conversations that have already started. But if you're listening, or you're not sure what to input in the conversation, just listen, and then say, oh, you know what? It might be something as simple as, so what are you all reading these days? And you might say, and everybody can go around, and it might be a business book. Everybody's reading business books. And you might say, or I might say, oh, you know what? I'm reading the 5th season. And they might say, well, what is the 5th season? And I will tell them it's a sci-fi, it's a science fiction novel. And I read it as a way to detox my brain from reading business materials and personal development materials and business stuff. I read it as something, as a fantasy, to take my mind off of things. And this is what it's about. And to try to go in, because guess what? Now they're intrigued with what you have to say in the book that you have. And they may need a new book to read, and they might have been trying to figure out what else to read besides business books or biographies. And now you've given them something that they can begin to read that is totally different, and totally different genre that they have never probably ever thought of. So you want to go ahead and broaden your small talk. And how to broaden your small talk, that's just more than just saying, well, how's the weather? It's reading. It's a new concept or an idea that you may have, or that you've heard of that no one else may have thought about. So you just want to listen and then interject when you have something to say. And the last one, less can be more. Even though we cannot always be a wallflower at a meeting or an event, trust me, sometimes being a wallflower is a good thing, right? is sometimes a good thing. But it goes back, I think, to the last point that I just made. Don't speak just to speak or just to talk, just to talk. Interject when you actually have something to say or you feel comfortable with saying something. So you don't necessarily want to sit up there and say, yeah, I want to do this, or necessarily take over the entire conversation. But you also want to listen to what others are saying, because you never know what you might hear in regards to a new concept or an idea that you've been thinking that you never heard of before, another opportunity, another networking event, another organization. It could be maybe one of them might even say, you know, I'm looking for a new house. If you're a real estate agent, that might be a new client for you. And you might interject and say, oh, well, what are you looking for? How long have you been looking? Not coming off straight with the, oh, well, I'm a real estate agent. No. So how's your search going? What areas or how long have you been looking? Things like that to open the door for the conversation to happen. So I hope today's live stream. So I hope today's tips were very helpful with learning and to going over a little bit more about how you speak. If you have any comments, just let me know in the comments, of course, below, where we can continue on the conversation. And I will talk to you guys next week, where we will finally talk about my favorite part, how you look. So take care, stay safe, and of course, as always, stay healthy. And I will talk to you guys next week in the next video.